How do we fight evil? That's a question many people are asking after the events of the last several weeks. And why are they asking that? Well, people are angry. They're lost and disgusted, especially as social media, the news, and even our own politicians are feeling fire, right? And there's people online celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, and it makes me angry and brokenhearted. You know, I hurt for his kids, I hurt for his wife, and we should not be celebrating the death, the murder of a fellow human. And when we talk about it, we can't say, well, yeah, it was terrible, but we're all confused. But our question, what do we do with all these feelings? How do we fight evil with all these emotions stirred up? One option I hear people advocating for is violence. That in response to what we see on our screens, we should be doing something like that. But what's one of the biggest problems with more violence? It's this. Who are we going to attack? What army or individual are we going to direct our rage at? Because most people I hear or see or read about, it's them or those people that we want to attack. But who are they? Right? Are we going to respond like the domestic terrorists who attack innocent people? Anybody that looks or sounds like them? Because that seems like a pretty dangerous proposal to me. And if we look past our anger, I bet you'll probably see that as well. And so here's a solution. Not the solution, but I think it's a big part of fixing where we are right now. And it involves outrageous courage. So just a couple thoughts to bring us back to the way of Jesus. So Jesus is the one who eternally defeated death and evil, right? Death is the biggest enemy this side of heaven. And they were both defeated by him. And when he stood up, Jesus, when he stood up for the innocent, he did it in a way that represented two important components of his character. He is called both the lion and the lamb. And that means the strength and courage of a lion, but also that self-sacrificial nature of a lamb. So as God, Jesus could have obliterated his enemies. But what did he do instead? Here's a couple examples. First, he stood up for the woman caught in adultery, major sin, right? And he used powerful and courageous love to take on her enemies and make them walk away, because he stood between her and literal death to save her life. That's what I mean sacrificial. Secondly, he fought evil not by being evil and shedding the blood of his enemies, but by being holy and loving and shedding his own. So here's what that means. Jesus showed us the power of real love. And the early Christians, for the first few hundred years, followed suit, and martyrs like St. Polycarp and St. Cecilia, check them out, boldly and willingly sacrificed their lives for the gospel. And the earliest Christians were indwelled with the powerful Spirit of God, and they turned the whole world upside down with courageous and selfless love. They gave the world a whole different paradigm to use. And with their own blood, they defiantly stood in the face of evil and death, and they shouted, "No, you will not win. There is another way, and his name is Jesus Christ." That took crazy amounts of trust and courage. Listen to some of the words from the New Testament saints, the people that were shaped by Jesus himself. Listen to this. The Apostle Paul in Romans 12, verse 17, simply says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Give careful thought to do what is honorable in everyone's sight." Same, 1 Thessalonians 5, the Apostle Paul, "See to it that no one repays evil for evil to anyone, but always pursue what is good for one another and for all." And that's the cycle we're in right now, evil for evil. And we have to be different. But some say, well, what about an eye for an eye, Pastor Kyle? Please understand first, that's something called Italian law, and it's about fair and equal punishment to keep people from going too far in their retribution, much like where we are. That's not a license to lash out in anger. Because James 1, the half-brother of Jesus, James chapter 1 says our anger is not going to produce the righteousness that God desires. Because unchecked anger, human anger, usually just produces more unchecked human anger. Also, 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, "For although we live in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh, since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. We demolish arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ. Those are ideas from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, not people that are being destroyed. And we do that by the Spirit of God guiding us to be Christ-like and stand together against the evil that we see. And here's how you do that. You shut down hateful or paranoid rhetoric when you hear it. You pray for our country and your enemies, staying off the news and social media. It means not posting, if you're on, not posting things that are ungodly and are only going to compound the problems that we have right now. It also means advocating for better health care to those who need better health care and mental health help, and being and building better, stronger communities. It means building something better, not burning down what's there, because civil war never ends well. Never. I've been to places where civil war has raged for generations, and the issues there no longer matter because it's just about hating and defeating the other side. And a lot of people that are calling for like war and things like that have no idea what that's like or what the results would even be. So we have to stop with that kind of talk. One more perspective from the Bible on defeating evil. It comes from the very end of time, the book of Revelation, and it's in chapter 12. And the scene is about how Satan and evil are finally defeated. This is great. I want you to listen to this. And they have defeated Satan by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. Revelation 12:11. So evil will be defeated by what Jesus did on the cross and by the testimony or the witness or the lives lived by Christian. Satan and evil will be beaten by the sacrificial example of Christians that point to the hope of Jesus, not by hate, politics, anger, revenge, retribution, or division, but by the gospel of Jesus Christ and the witness of those who belong to him. Think about that. We're living in a critically important cultural moment right now. What will we do? What will future generations look back and say about us? Will they say that we plunged this great nation into civil war? Or more of the same? Or will they see a generation who boldly took a stand for the name and way of Jesus? Remember, like I said earlier, evil was defeated by courageous love by the early Christians. And that can happen again now, and it will happen again in the future. And again, the question for us today is this: what's going to happen in our time? We must slow down and answer that well. The early Christians, again, they changed the world not by the blood of others, but by their own. Same for the end times. Same for our time. So how do we fight evil? Through the gospel of Jesus Christ and through our bold, selfless, and loving witness to that gospel, not through more evil and violence. That takes real courage. I know loving your enemy may seem crazy, but it's a trust thing. It says to Jesus, hey, I'm going to do it your way instead of mine. So for the sake of the gospel, the sake of our country, people must be courageous enough to stop fighting. Evil is not going to be defeated by more hate. It'll be defeated by courageous love. Let's be the generation that chooses that way.